We are here to do the psychic notes that I have been promising you for several days. And to set this up, there's a few things I want to do to set the stage so you have a little bit of framework, so you'll have a little bit of bearing. Like, instead of me just barreling into like message, I want you to have a bit of a foundation so that you know what you're heading into. And one of those focal points that my spirit team has made really clear to me, they're like, Dana, we need you to share what you have been experiencing from long-term cycles to show how this information is potentially lining up. So what you need to know is that in my personal life, as I have been moving through this spring, and like a lot of you going through really intense energy cycles, went through the healing crisis, had a lot of really powerful, intense, deep, energetic things happen. And as that has happened, as those shorter term energy cycles have completed, I have felt a really deep sense that they have connected way back into like biblical times. Like, I've had this feeling of like, oh my God, I am like cleaning up, tying up loose ends, balancing out karma, destiny, finishing contracts with all these different types of people, not only in the here and now, not only in this lifetime of 2025, but way back to biblical times and pre-biblical times. And I felt it in a very visceral, intense kind of way that's, been very real. I mean, sometimes I have had this feeling of like, I'm walking around with people in, robes and sandals and in the desert, like, all of those cliche biblical type of things that kind of come up for some of us sometimes. That has all been cycling through for me, and a feeling of like completion on top of completion on top of completion, and then messages from spirit team going, wow, you are completing so many things. You're going way and above and beyond the call of duty and so much more than we ever thought you could. And so there's been a lot of completion in the air for me. And this is on the tail end of like many, many years, very deep, intense work. And so it's a little bit eerie to have some of these cycles completing in the way that they are when they are, as I see things climaxing with our United States government and, socioeconomic system here in the United States. Well, I give that to you as a focal point because as I took these messages that were coming off of the heart of the United States House of Representatives floor during that voting cycle, these are the messages I'm going to be sharing with you, are messages that came off the floor right around that time. And because the energies were so intense and the messages were moving so fast and I was in so deep with them, I wasn't completely aware and completely clear of some of the other energetic stuff going on. And as I've gone back and reviewed it, and this is why Spirit Team has had me wait a little while to drop this message, because there's a much larger picture going on here. As I've had a chance to review it, I've had that eerie feeling of like, oh, the big, beautiful bill, that wasn't just about economic policy for the United States in 2025 and beyond. That whole energy setup with the House of Representatives, with the people involved and the president and the vote and the House floor and that bill, like all of that energy is connected into something deep, dark, ancient, from way back past other lifetimes. We have no idea the energies that were anchored in with that bill. Okay, so all of us in modern day America, 2025 technology, modern day America, technology driven modern day America, we're looking at it from a very closed scope, and rightly so, definitely rightly so, deep concern about like, oh my God, what are the 1%ers doing with our money and our representation? And oh my God, they want to crucify us. They want to kill us. Like, we've got that whole swirl going on. And like I've said in other videos, sometimes we get our face smushed right up against the glass And I've had a chance to review the messages that came off the floor from spirit world and those energies at that time and kind of view it from a larger scope and go, people, wait a minute. This plugs into some really ancient old stuff that we are working on completing as a collective, right? So I'm dropping, like, that's one framework. The other framework I want you to be ultra aware of is the masculine and the feminine. Because right now in our country and a lot globally, different countries, different representation, but right now in the United States, our representing the governance of our United States right now is an extreme contingent of toxic white patriarchy, white nationalist Christian males. Huge extreme swing on the continuum, right? And this grouping of people does not represent the majority of the rest of us, right? This whole swath of diversity. Like if when you think about it, the United States of America is one of the most diverse populations in the entire globe. And we've got this extreme pocket of people going, don't want to go. And they are trying to legislate with power and money, with government policy, power and money. They're trying to legislate, extreme white conservative Christian, skin tones is basically what's going on right now, right? Well, let's take a look at the feminine. So one of the things that happened for me when this vote happened and the messages were coming in off the floor, and then I took some time to breathe it in and look at it, and Spirit Team was showing me some things, I started feeling this echo from, way back when, because I went and looked up some dates. I wanted to know, when was democracy officially born in the patriarchy? When was it born? 736 BC, almost over 3,000 years ago, okay? Well, what I wanted to know then, that echoey feeling that I was having, I wanted to know, when was our last matriarchal, sacred feminine, divine feminine, fully democratic representation? Well, when I went to go look it up, Google AI said to me, and I know there's probably other reference materials out there, and I would love the people who are up on women's studies to weigh in on this with resources to let us know. But I wanted to know, I had this question in my body of, when was the last time we had on record predominantly matriarchal, democratically run governments and societies? Who was that? When was that? What did that look like? What did that feel like? Because right now we are so drenched in this extreme patriarchal tone, right? Well, what are the other examples of that? And as far as I know right now, we've got some European countries with some strong feminine representation. We know Michigan is really beginning to crack through a strong representation. And I think there's a whole group of African American women judges in, I think it's Houston. Don't quote me on that. These are the examples I've got in my mind as far as grouping of women doing democratic government work. What I want you to be aware of is, even though we're in crunch time right now and we're right up against it right now, I want you to begin to have an awareness that what we are living through right now in the end times, this has context stretching way far back. We're completing cycles. That's number one. Number two, we need to be asking, what is our memory? What is our body memory of democratic, circular, matriarchal, functioning democracies? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And because I believe whatever is happening right now in the short-term news cycles that are part of the concentric rings of these really long looping cycles that go all the way back to ancient biblical times, and now we're going to pitch forward into this huge transformation that we're going to be going through. Something is going on right here and right now with the tipping of the scales that we need to be aware of the longevity of this, the long range of this, the long-term cycles that we're playing out right now. And we're at that pinhead of this pinnacle epicenter place in July of 2025. That's what it feels like to me. We're like in this pinhead tipping point kind of place. And one more thing that I want to pitch out there. If you've been with me any length of time, you know that I'm working on learning about and growing about with timeline information, right? And one of the things I've learned with my timeline research, like literally physically graphing out timelines as I pendulum check them, one of the things I want to remind you of is that in 1930s and 1940s Germany, World War II time, the timeline was flat. There was no higher power, higher sourcing, evolutionary cycling, resourcing that humanity really had at that point. Like the people who had to respond to the shadow and the darkness did it at a very physical, gut-wrenching level. That was my grandparents' generation, and I've got that DNA in my body. So, I have recall. I didn't live through it, but I've got DNA cellular code recall. But now, I want to remind you, as we're facing a very fast-moving fascist shadow that I deeply believe is a going back and reviewing it and this last cycle of it, I want you to know that the shadow that we're facing now is sitting in an environment of 6, 7, 8 major timeline jumps, all sandwiched up against one another. And we hit another big one on August 1st. I've been looking at this one coming through on August 1st. It's a freaking 12-day timeline jump, people. And I don't know what level it is at yet, and I haven't channeled it. It is huge. It is like an energy bomb going off at the front end of August. So we have resourcing. We have multi-dimensional resourcing, 5D, 6D, 7D, 8D, multi-dimensional resourcing. We have vibrations upon top of vibrations. We have access into the ethers and the spirit teams that we're working with and all the people who are awakening right now. It is not an accident that the shadow is voluminously ricocheting out of control right now, because guess what? We're doing leap upon leap upon leap upon leap, right? And ultimately, I believe one of the spiritual purposes of this time right now is how much light can we hold in our bodies as we face off with this scary ass shadow. I got to thinking about it, a couple nights ago, and I'm like, the more they go, the more we're able to go with light. So as we head into these messages that I'm going to share with you, these are the things that I want you to keep in mind to kind of touch bases with each one of these points. Remember, as the House members of the House of Representatives came in to vote on July 2nd, on Thursday, July 2nd, 2025, I had been pendulum checking each and every one of them for about a week. So my body was already tuned in to 435 people who came in from across the country, quote unquote representation, who came in from across the country and was in one room, a room that has been the heart of American democracy for a handful of centuries. They all came in and landed. And so my body, I think the spirit team had me do this because they wanted me to have an intrinsic somatic connection with all of the people there in that room, so I could actually begin to pick up on some of the messages they had for me and see some of the energetic things I would not have seen otherwise. So let's go ahead and start from there. Spirit team began with the message of they are showing themselves. They are showing themselves. Now, if you know, one of my main MOs to do the pendulum check on the Senate and House of Representatives is that we never get the full insider information. And because of that, a whole lot of corruption, what I've found, and we know to be true, is that a whole lot of corruption gets covered up. What did Spirit Team start with in that very first message to me? They said, they are showing themselves. They are showing themselves. So that's a significant message, right? Then they said to me on Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025 at 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, they said, your American government will never function the same after this. And, you know, when you kind of look at it through a lot of different viewfinders, it's kind of like, you know, yeah, we kind of already know that. We can see that. We can see the ruptures happening, and we're not going to be able to put it back together again the way that it was before. That is of significance. Then this is also on the evening of July 2nd, 2025. Quote, they said, there is some really old powers at work here. And this was when I first started getting that energy of like, what do they mean by old? Because first I was like, you know, the age of the American democracy. When I checked in and tuned in there somatically, I had this like bungee boomerang feeling of like, oh, no, this is like old. Like that was my first hit on, oh my God, whatever is going on the House floor with this bill, this is, it's like an energy arm reaching all the way back into biblical times. Like, at the original start of patriarchal democratic society. And remember what date I dropped when I looked this up on Google AI? 736 BC is the number that I was given. So this is very, very old stuff that was from back, you know, way back when, connecting into this bill and the floor of the House right now. Now we turn the page. Now it is the morning of July the 3rd, 2025. Hakeem Jeffries is speaking from the floor. I've got that all on. I'm tuned in with the floor. Spirit Team had me shut that down, and then I was tuning in with them. I was going on a walk with Peanut, and they basically started cranking out messages. So Spirit Team said it all big bold letters, begins to crack apart now. And Spirit Team has been saying to me for like repeatedly for days upon end, they're saying it's cracking apart, it's cracking apart, it's cracking apart. And I keep looking at it going, you know, like what's cracking apart? Like this regime is like steamrolling us right now. And, you know, we feel like we're cracking apart. The American government, it's kind of cracking apart. But about a day ago, I went and pendulum checked it. And what the pendulum is showing right now is that eventually the fascism arm will crack apart, the American government will crack apart, and we stand firm. So you need to keep that as some sort of end result going on here. So right about here, there was an energy in the air. This that I'm going to read to you, Spirit Team didn't give it to me as a verbatim verbal message that I can hear in my ears. It was more of a energy in the room. It was like me translating the energetic stuff in the room. And basically what it came down to, what I've been able to sort through is like, oh, by them, meaning the Republicans, the GOP, by them, the GOP, fully voting against the American public, it sets new things in motion. You know, another interpretation of this is they abandoned us, they betrayed us, and they used our own democratic process, our own democratic system against us. Folks, do you know the karmic weight of that? So when new democratic systems were set in motion, set in place, you know, right around that time of 736 BC and came through, you know, the Greek times and the Roman times and was, you know, practiced and put in place. And the whole ideology was, you know, this whole by the people, for the people, representation kind of thing. Like that is the whole intent. And so to have an arm, a branch of the government overtly abandon and betray its own people, using its very own system against us. Like, I don't even have the words for the kind of the weight of the karmic betrayal of that. And what that energetically begins to set in motion for those people doing that. This is where I really heard that echo and boomerang of whatever happened on that House floor with this vote. It has far-reaching consequences all the way back to ancient times, ricocheting and spring-loading something for us into a future. So that's when I began to have the feeling of, like, I know we all went through that heartbreak and the fallout, and I felt it too, and the days after of the fear and the hurt and the rage that came with that whole thing. But what I will say is, the glimmers that I saw going on, and although they were scary and uncomfortable, the glimmers that I saw going on, I was like, oh, they just did something. They just energetically, karmically did something. They just set something in motion that is going to come back and haunt them, and ultimately destroy them and this new thing, this new system that they're trying to put into place. Like, I had that feeling like, oh, they're playing with some biblical fire there. Ooh. And so even though I was having my very human 2025 response from the whole thing, I was also having my metaphysician long-term look at, like, I literally had the feeling of, like, holy fuck, what did they just do? They just let the banshees out of the Ark of the Covenant. They just did something. They are not going to be able to put that thing back into the box. And that's when some other things started coming up in the messaging, okay? And we're still on July 3rd. When I started picking up on those pieces and parts, and I just got to remind you, I hadn't put it all together yet. I was picking up on these pieces and parts. It's happening in real time. It's all living in the heat of the moment of it, right? And that's when I began to start hearing that wording about the eight-headed monster. And you all know I have been pendulum checking the eight-headed monster since last fall. That's been my name for it. And then that's when I heard it switch names. That's when I started hearing wording like the beast. I started hearing the wording of the beast. And then I heard the wording of the minotaur. And then I heard this was kind of an updated modern take on it. Spirit World was trying to make light of a very heavy situation. They started calling it the Minotaur Special. And that's when I had that feeling of, like, and remember, I'm all somatically plugged into this because I've been connected with these people for a certain number of days, flying in from the country. They're on the floor of the house, a very, sacred ancient place, and, connected into, this time and biblical times. And all of a sudden I could feel and I could see the Minotaur on the floor of the House of Representatives. It showed itself energetically. That's huge. That in and of itself cracks something apart. Now, this is where I would love for some of you who are much more knowledgeable about the Bible than I am, because, like, I went in and looked this up just very surface level, just a little bit, and there's referencing in the Bible about the quote unquote beast showing itself around the end times and the number 666. Now, I happen to believe, like, I've gone through a transformative experience with the number 666. It's always been connected with the beast and hell and all the bad stuff, but we know 666 can very well be connected with heaven and God and very good things. But this whole thing, like, as the house floor thing is going on, the vote thing is going on, I'm beginning to see, like, this energy and the reach back to biblical times, and it, like, all this stuff is just swirling, and I can see the Minotaur. I can see the beast, the 666, on the House of the Representatives floor. And that was really, really unsettling. And that's when Spirit Team said to me, they're like, now it can happen. Now it can happen. All right, so I need to take just a little bit of a segue and do a little bit of metaphysical education here to share with all of you. And so I don't know if you all remember, I just recently put a video out about that video called What's in a Name. We talked about, spirit world showing up, and sometimes, they play with, there's low vibrations that play with us. And I give that example of, if you really want to know who's working with you, you say, reveal yourself now. And I find it very interesting. The spirit team had me do that video with that information because I am sitting there at my desk having pendulum check, connect with these people, connected into the house of the floor, and I'm having that reveal yourself now moment of who's truly running things in this country. And the beast showing up. And there's something going on that when we can actually see what it is and who it is. That's why I have done the pendulum check on the Senate and the House, so we can see who it is and what it is and where they stand. When that happens, it changes something metaphysically. It changes something. Once something is revealed, it begins to lose its power because we can see it, right? It's no longer hanging out in the shadows. So I want all of you to know that the beast, the biblical beast, the 666, the Minotaur special, it had to reveal itself to do what they want to do. And that right there is their downfall. That is their crack. That is their cracking point. Not only that, the energies they set in motion by using a democratic system to use against us, the karmic load on that is of such epic proportions, I can't even begin to tell you. And they're unloading that. They're unleashing that in the middle of 5D? Are you freaking kidding me? In the middle of these mega timeline jumps? It's like they just lit the fuse on this whole thing blowing apart just by doing that. And I don't know when and I don't know how, but I had that feeling of what they did was really bad for all of us. But at the same time, remember I don't know where I did that channel. There was something going on in the channels of what they did, the way that they're doing this sets in motion their own demise. That's how it energetically stacks up. Okay. I'm going back and looking at some of my cards just to make sure I'm catching up. Here's another message, and this is me. This is not Spirit Team. This is me processing everything. And one of the things I processed was they decided things about our lives that we don't agree with using their obscene wealth and power using our own system against us. Yeah, and then I wrote it down. This causes metaphysical, biblical shifts in power structure they can't hold. It cracks. They can't come back from this. So this is me right out of the gate beginning to realize, oh, you do stuff like this? Oh, this is the stuff that boomerangs. So that was the energy peak of things. That was the wave of information that happened on July 3rd of 2025, primarily in the morning into the early afternoon. That's when I was experiencing all of that. And in the wake of all of this, once the vote went through, it was like clockwork, people. It was like clockwork. Once the vote went through, I had this very somatic feeling of DT has outlived his purpose for them, powers behind the scenes, for them, and he goes now. I had it, as the vote happened and it landed, and as he did the signing the next day, the feeling that I had was oh, he did everything that, quote unquote, they wanted him to do. And the feeling I had was oh, he's disposable now. They don't need him anymore. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with him as we move forward from the events of July 2nd, July 3rd, July 4th. And then I woke up on the morning of July 4th, and the energies had calmed down and the messaging had calmed down. But there was this very distinct message that came through on July 4th, and that was the beast has shown itself. So spirit world came back, and I could very clearly hear and feel that energy of the beast has shown itself. The transformation can begin now. So something is going on energetically that they, and we know who they are, that they reached an epic point of congealing the shadow in one spot, congealing the dark in one spot. You know, they reached a peak moment of that. And in doing so, the beast had to be revealed. The Minotaur had to be revealed. Oh, and a little side note on the Minotaur. Minotaur represents greatest fears, greatest desires. Interesting symbolism. And there was a feeling on the morning of July 4th of like the energy process in the transformation and the evolution, the revolution, it can now take place because the darkest of the darkest revealed itself as we're holding our resistance and our light. And there was a feeling of like, oh, the transformation can happen now. Something got released. And all of us participating in that as a nation and a world, because the world is connected into this as well. You know, globally, that vote was being followed globally, right? So that vote on that floor at that time was extremely high stakes, very, very, very dark shadow, and extreme amounts of resistance and love and light. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the metaphysics, the physical, the metaphysical dynamics that got set up and put into motion during that 24-hour period that is going to launch us as a society, not only here in the United States, but globally. It's going to launch us as a society into a whole other direction as we move forward and things begin to play out. And even on July 4th, you could feel that shift. You could feel the people falling away who did not celebrate. I didn't celebrate. I watched whole communities just sit it out. Like, when was the last time we sat out a national holiday? When did that split? When did that crack happen that deeply? And so then Saturday morning, this was the next and the last message that I will leave with you. This is what Spirit Team said to me, like after all those events happened, July 4th happened, we went through the whole emotional wave of it and, processing it. They said, Dana, Dana, everything, and we mean everything, gets turned on its ear after today. Be on standby. So this is Spirit Team confirming to me that whole spidey sense feeling I had of like, oh my God, they unleashed the Minotaur. There's no coming back from that. That sets something in motion they have no control over. And the beast showed up in the Bible as an end times event thing anyway. And even though this whole thing is quite scary and dark and heavy and heartbreaking and hurtful, like we're living for the first time in this country as a collective knowing that the people running the country want to harm us at the level that they want to kill us. They want to kill us, and we know that, and it's scary and dark and heavy and heartbreaking and painful, and it's all of that. I am on board with you with that, and I am living that with you as well. And I want you to step back, and I want you to look at the metaphysical context of what is going on in the short term and how it connects back long term to ancient energies completing, and how that is connected into some sort of spring load or change or transformation that we are all living through right now. So Spirit Team has one last message that they want me to land to close this out, and that is a reminder. And that reminder is, remember, You are living in very dynamic times with very dynamic energies, with incredibly powerful timeline jumps, and you have the power to creatively change what is happening in your country and on your globe. And you need to know that you've already been a part of, and you're already a part of creating that change and creating that shift. Things are in motion. All right, that's what I've got for you for now. Make sure you keep walking forward to meet those miracles along the way, and I will see you in my next video.